The station hung in the void between stars, a glittering ring of metal and light. It was the heart of the Galactic Council, a place where decisions were made that shaped the fates of 1,000 worlds. Today, it would decide the fate of one more. The human ship that approached was small and clean, its design efficient but simple. It was called the Morning Calm. Inside, Ambassador Jin sat perfectly still, his hands resting on his knees. He looked out the viewport at the impossible size of the council station. He was a man in his early 50s, his black hair streaked with silver, his face calm. Beside him, Science Officer Myra watched her screens, her dark eyes missing nothing. She was younger, her focus intense, a coiled spring of quiet energy. "Remember," Jin said, his voice low, "we are not here as students. We are here as equals. We have earned our place." Myra nodded, but said nothing. She had reviewed the cultural files. The council species were ancient, advanced, and famously patient. They valued logic above all. Humanity's file, she knew, was marked with one concerning note: volatile emotional spectrum. The docking was smooth and silent. A guide met them, a tall being with smooth gray skin and large, dark eyes. It called itself an envoy. It did not give a name. "Welcome," it said, its voice a soft chime in their translators. "The council is assembled. Please follow." The walk through the station was humbling. The ceilings were incredibly high, the architecture flowing like frozen liquid metal. Beings of shapes and sizes Jin had only seen in files moved gracefully through the halls. Some glanced at the humans. Most did not. The council chamber was a vast circular room. A soft light glowed from the floor. In a ring around the center stood 11 representatives of the founding species. There was the insectoid Vel, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the light. There was a being of swirling gas contained in a gentle field, and another that looked like a small tree of crystal. They were the stewards of the galaxy. Jin and Mira were led to the center. A spot of light fell on them. "Ambassador Jin of Earth," a voice said. It came from everywhere. It was the crystal being, its name unpronounceable, so Jin thought of it as Elder. "You have journeyed far. We have observed your species' rapid ascent. It is notable." "Thank you," Jin said, bowing slightly. "Humanity greets the Galactic Council with respect and hope. We come seeking a partnership, a place within the community of civilized worlds." There was a silence. It was a heavy, thoughtful silence. "Partnership is a word with weight," said the gaseous being, its voice a whisper of wind. "It implies balance, equity. Your technological achievements are impressive for your time span. Yet true civilization is measured in stability, in harmony." Myra felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She kept her face still. Elder spoke again. "We have studied your history. Your progress is undeniable, but it is a progress stained with conflict. Your own planet bears the scars of your passions, war, greed, division. These are the marks of a youthful species, one not yet ready for the responsibilities of the stars." Jin's calm did not break. "Our history has conflict, yes, but from that conflict we learned cooperation. From division we forged unity to reach for the stars. Our emotions are not a flaw. They are the source of our compassion, our art, our drive to protect what we love." A new voice, sharp and clicking, came from Vel the insectoid. "Emotional drive is an inefficient engine. It leads to irrational action. The Council's peace has lasted millennia because we base our decisions on logic, on the collective good, removed from personal feeling. Your file indicates your decision-making is still heavily influenced by these biochemical surges. It is a risk." Jin felt the words like physical blows. They were not being evaluated on their merits, but on a prejudice. "You judge us for the path we walked, not the destination we reached," he said, his voice still steady but firmer. "We control our passions. We channel them." "Perhaps," Elder chimed softly, "but the risk is too great. The galaxy is a delicate system. Introducing an unpredictable element could disrupt peace for all." The decision, it seemed, had been made long before they arrived. "Therefore," Elder announced, the light in the room dimming slightly, "the Galactic Council extends its mentorship to humanity of Earth. A probationary period of 100 standard years will commence. During this time, you will be granted access to basic galactic knowledge under supervision. Your fleet movements will be monitored. Your technological developments will be reviewed. In time, if you prove your emotional volatility can be sufficiently managed, you will be considered for full association." It was not partnership. It was a leash. A century-long test where they would be treated like children. Jin looked at the ring of alien faces. He saw no malice there, only a calm, absolute certainty. They believed they were being kind. They believed they were protecting the galaxy from the dangerous-feeling apes from Earth. To argue would only confirm their bias. He bowed again, lower this time, hiding the fire that had ignited in his eyes. "The Council's wisdom is vast," he said, the words tasting like ash. "We will consider your terms." The meeting was over. The envoy led them out. The walk back to their ship was silent. The majestic halls now felt like a cage. They boarded the morning calm, the hatch sealed. Only then, in the familiar hum of their own ship, did Jin's shoulders slump, just for a moment. Mira stared at the deck, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles were white. "They saw nothing of who we are," she finally said, her voice tight. "They saw a file, a warning label." Jin moved to the cockpit and initiated the undocking sequence. The great station began to recede from the viewport. "They saw what they wanted to see," he replied, his gaze fixed on the stars. "They see emotion as chaos, as noise. They do not understand it can also be a signal, a focused beam." He turned to look at Myra. The calm on his face was gone, replaced by a deep, smoldering resolve. "They have given us 100 years of probation, of being watched." A faint, hard smile touched his lips. 100 years is a long time to learn, a long time to build something they cannot even imagine. Myra met his look, and the anger in her cooled, hardening into something else. Determination. "What do we build, Ambassador?" Jin turned back to the viewport, where Earth was now a bright blue dot in the distance. "We don't build a better argument. We don't build nicer ships to impress them." He paused, the stars reflecting in his dark eyes. "We build an answer, one so clear, so undeniable, that the next time we speak to the Council, they will listen. Not as mentors to students, but as equals to a power they finally understand." The ship leapt into the warp of faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the Galactic Council station dwindled to a speck, then vanished, its leaders content in their decision. They had secured peace, they believed. They had managed a potential threat. They did not see the seed they had planted. They did not feel the quiet, unified fury that now flowed back toward a small blue world. A fury that would not erupt, but would be forged in silence over 100 years. The first lesson had been given. The next one, humanity would teach. 10 years passed in the quiet, watchful peace of the Galactic Council. On their great ring station, the affairs of a galaxy were managed. The file on humanity was updated routinely, without alarm. Their probation was proceeding as expected. They were cooperative, if somewhat reserved. Their technology advanced at an acceptable monitored pace. They were a well-behaved student. On Earth, everything was different. The planet had become a single, silent workshop. The divisions of the past were gone, buried under the shared, quiet weight of the Council's judgment. The humiliation of that day in the glittering chamber had been a fire, but instead of an explosion, it had become a forge. A cold, determined forge. Jin was no longer an ambassador. He stood on a metal gantry high inside a cavern so vast its ceiling was lost in misty darkness. Around him, the air thrummed with a deep, steady power. He wore simple work clothes, his hands marked with grease and faint scars. Below, stretching down into the planet's depths, was a structure of impossible scale. It was not a machine, exactly. It was more like a heart valve, built into the living rock of the earth itself. "It is steady, Jin, see?" a voice said beside him. It was Myra. Her hair was tied back, her face smudged with dust, but her eyes were brighter than he had ever seen them on the Council station. She held a data slate glowing with complex gravity readings. The Calypso deep tap is at 100%. The energy bleed is within 0.001% of projections. Jin nodded, watching the slow, powerful movement of colossal pistons far below. They weren't just drawing geothermal energy. They were tuning it, harmonizing it, like plucking a string on a giant instrument buried in the world. And the others? 7 are fully operational. The remaining 5 will be online within 6 months, Mira said. The network is singing. A very quiet song. This was Project Jollearn. It was not a spaceship or a weapon you could hold. It was an idea, given monstrous planetary form. The Council had dismissed humanity's passion as a dangerous engine. Very well. They would use a different engine. They would use the Earth itself. The project used the planet's own tectonic energy, its magnetic field, its rotational momentum. It was a resonator, designed to do one thing: send a controlled, unimaginably powerful pulse through the fabric of space-time itself. Not to destroy, but to push. To guide. What do the Council monitors show? Jin asked, his voice soft. Myra allowed herself a small, thin smile. They see increased geothermal energy harvesting. They have it filed under sustainable development. Primitive but adequate. They see the excavation for the Siberian mass driver as planetary resource reallocation. They are not looking for this. Jin, their logic does not go here. To build a weapon, you point it out. We have pointed it in. They cannot conceive of it. At that moment, a soft chime echoed in the cavern. An incoming priority transmission, tagged with the Galactic Council symbols. Jin and Mira exchanged a look. The calm of the workshop was broken. They took the call in a small, shielded office carved into the rock. The screen resolved into the face of Vel, the insectoid Council Science Liaison. Its multifaceted eyes regarded them. "Representative Hana," Vel said, its clicking voice translated. Mira had moved to Deep Sight Engineering years ago. The new human liaison to the Council was Hana, a woman in her 40s with a calm face and eyes that gave away nothing. She appeared on another screen, her image piped in from the lunar embassy. "Liaison Vel," Hana said, her tone polite, even warm. "How can we assist the Council?" "We are detecting anomalous energy signatures," Vel stated, a data stream appearing beside its image. It showed gravitational ripples and deep magnetic fluctuations from Earth. "The patterns do not match your reported geothermal projects." "Explain." Hannah's smile did not waver. "Ah, you've detected the Yonsei Deep Sink project. It is an ambitious attempt to stabilize continental plates. A form of planetary care. You know our history with earthquakes. We are simply being thorough stewards of our own world." The lie was smooth, simple, and wrapped in a truth. Vel processed this. Planetary stewardship was logical. It was a sign of maturity. The data was strange, but human technology was often inelegant. "The scale is considerable," Vel noted. The need is considerable, Hannah replied, her head tilting slightly. Is the Council concerned? We are happy to send full schematics, though they are quite dull. She offered the bait. Endless, confusing technical files written in human engineering jargon. Vel's mandibles twitched. A sign of minor frustration. That will not be necessary. Continue your reporting on schedule. The Council observes all. Of course, Hannah said, bowing her head. We are always observed. Thank you for your concern. The transmission ended. In the rocky office on Earth, Jin let out a slow breath. On the lunar embassy, Hannah's pleasant smile vanished the second the screen went dark. Her face was like stone. Back on Earth, Jin looked at Mira. They are sniffing, but they are not seeing. It won't hold forever, Mira said. The network signatures will get stronger as we synchronize. Eventually, even their logic will trip over the numbers. Jin walked to the mouth of the cavern, looking out over the nighttime landscape. Lights glittered across the planet. Not the lights of cities, but the lights of construction, of hidden shipyards, of a world working toward a single secret purpose. The stars above were the same stars the Council watched from. Forever is not what we need, Jin said. We just need enough time. They think they are watching children play with tools. They do not know that children have read the blueprints of the house and are quietly rewiring the foundations. He thought of Hannah, alone on the moon, playing her part with perfect calm. He thought of Captain Tay and the other officers, training crews not for battle, but for a single perfect maneuver. He thought of the billions of people on Earth, all knowing a fraction of the truth, all trusting the whole. The shared silence was its own kind of power. The Galactic Council slept, content in its oversight. It monitored the energy outputs, filed the reports, and updated the human file. Progress satisfactory. Emotional volatility appears suppressed. They believed they were succeeding. They believed humanity was being tamed by the gentle, firm hand of logic and rule. Below their sensors, deep in the bones of the world, the giant resonators hummed their quiet, waiting song. The planet was no longer just a home. It was becoming a chamber, a capacitor, a bell waiting to be struck. And every human on it, from Jin in the deep cavern to a farmer looking at the sky, was part of the clapper. They waited, not with fear, but with a patient, focused intensity that the galaxy had never seen before and would never, ever forget. The peace of the Galactic Council was a deep and ancient thing. It was a peace kept by wisdom, by powerful fleets, and by the calm certainty that all new species would eventually learn their place within its orderly system. That peace shattered when the Cathar arrived. The Cathar were not members of the Council. They were a predatory empire from beyond the galactic rim, a hive of warriors who expanded by consuming other civilizations. Their ships were ugly, brutal things, all sharp angles, and dark metal. They did not communicate. They attacked. The Council's frontier world of Lyra IV was the first to fall. The elegant, silver ships of the Council fleet met the Cathar swarm and were torn apart. The Council's logic and diplomacy meant nothing to the sheer, mindless hunger of the enemy. Panic, a feeling long forgotten, began to whisper through the Council chambers. On the great ring station, emergency lights cast long shadows. The representatives were gathered, their usual calm replaced with a tense, buzzing energy. The gaseous being swirled in agitated patterns. The crystal elder pulsed with a dim, worried light. Vel, the insectoid science liaison, now acting as a military advisor, presented the grim numbers. Our primary defensive fleet is out of position. The Cathar advance is too rapid. They will reach the core systems in less than 3 cycles. Our available forces are insufficient to stop them. A silence followed, heavy with desperation. Then, The representative from a species of gentle, plant-like being spoke. There is the reserve clause, Article 7 of the Galactic Charter. For times of existential threat. The room grew still. Article 7 allowed the Council to commandeer the military assets of all species under its protection, including those on probation. It was a law from a darker, older time, never used in living memory. It turned wards into shields. Elder pulsed slowly. The humans. Their fleet is small, but it is near the predicted Cathar path. It is expendable. It could buy time. Vel's mandibles clicked. Their ships are primitive. Their crews are emotionally volatile. Sending them will be a delay tactic, nothing more. They will be destroyed. A necessary delay, the gaseous being whispered sadly. The logic is sound. The few for the many. Send the command. On the bridge of the human cruiser Zhongzhou, Captain Tay watched the data from the frontier. He was a man built for calm, his face placid, his hands steady on the command console. Around him, his crew worked in quiet efficiency. They had seen the reports of Lyra 4. They knew what was coming. The Zhongzhou was part of the first human flotilla, a dozen ships near the edge of the Sol system on a training exercise. The exercise was a lie. They were waiting. Priority transmission, his comms officer said, her voice tight. Encrypted with Galactic Council override command protocols. It's Article 7. A cold stillness settled over the bridge. They all knew what Article 7 meant. Tay gave a single nod. On screen, the face of a council envoy appeared, its gray features impassive. Captain Tay of the human vessel Zhongzhou. By the authority of Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, the Galactic Council hereby commandeers all human military assets. You are ordered to immediately proceed to the Xylos choke point and engage the Cathar advance. You will hold the line until Council reinforcements arrive. Compliance is mandatory. The message ended. The bridge was silent. Every crew member looked at Tay. He did not move for a long moment. He looked at the star map, at the blinking red mass of the Cathar swarm, and at the blue dot of Earth. Send the prearranged signal, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Code Black to all human vessels and to Lunar Command. Signal sent, Captain, the officer replied, her fingers flying over the controls. On the Lunar Embassy, Hana received the signal. The calm mask she had worn for a decade finally fell. Her face hardened into something beautiful and terrible. She stood up from her desk and walked to a secure panel on the wall. She pressed her hand against it. A hidden compartment slid open, revealing a single, simple button under a glass cover. She did not hesitate. She broke the glass and pressed the button. Back on the Council station, Vel was monitoring the human fleet's response. The ships were turning, their engines powering up. Good. They were obeying. It was logical. They had no choice. Then, every screen in the observation hub flashed white and died. A screeching burst of static screamed from every speaker, followed by absolute silence. The lights flickered and went to emergency power. What is happening? The gaseous being whirled in alarm. Vel scrambled at its console. A massive electromagnetic pulse localized to this sector. It originated from the human lunar outpost. It has disabled all primary sensors, communications, and external monitoring systems. Before anyone could react, a single clean communication line re-established. It was a video feed. Hana's face filled the main screen. She was not in her office. She was in a bare metal room, a travel pack slung over her shoulder. Council members, she said, her voice calm, clear, and utterly without warmth. You have made a final error. You looked at our history and saw only violence. You looked at our hearts and saw only chaos. You saw our love for our home as a weakness to be exploited. You commanded us to die for your peace. She took a step closer to the screen, her eyes locking with the unseen viewers. You chose to see our passion as a flaw. You will now see its focus. On the star map behind her, the icons for every human ship winked out. Not destroyed, simply gone from the Council's tracking. They had vanished. Our probation is over, Hannah said. She reached off screen and picked up a small device. Your observation is over. She clicked the device. The entire lunar embassy feed dissolved into digital noise and then went black. At the same moment, all the dormant monitoring drones the Council had placed around the Sol system, every hidden probe, every relay self-destructed in a series of small, silent flashes. The Council chamber was left in stunned silence, lit only by dim red emergency lights. Their screens were dead. Their ears were deaf. The humans, their obedient little wards, were gone. And with them, their last, desperate shield against the Cathar. Vel stared at the blank screen, its logical mind struggling to process. The humans had not refused the order. They had not argued. They had simply removed themselves. They had planned for this. They had expected to be used as fodder, and they had prepared an answer that was not rebellion, but disappearance. Elder's crystalline form dimmed. They have left us blind, it chimed, a note of something like fear in its harmonic voice. And they have left the path to their world open. The terrible, unspoken truth hung in the air. The Cathar would follow the path of least resistance, the path to the core. That path went straight through the now undefended, seemingly helpless Sol system. The Council had just sacrificed its pawn, only to find the pawn had willingly leapt from the board, taking the king's sight with it. And now the enemy was headed directly for Earth. The Cathar swarm was a wave of darkness against the stars. Their ships, shaped like broken teeth, devoured the empty space between systems. The defeat of the Council fleet had made them bold. They saw no more resistance. Their path to the rich, central worlds of the galaxy was clear. And that path, according to their ancient simple maps, went through a backwater system with a single watery planet. A planet named Earth. On the Council station, the atmosphere was one of mourning and grim resignation. The main sensors were still offline, blinded by Hana's final act. Long-range telescopes showed the Cathar advance. They watched as the enemy armada, a blot of thousands of ships, swept past the gas giants of the Sol system. There was no sign of the human fleet. Captain Tay's ships were gone, likely hiding or already destroyed in some futile, unseen skirmish. They will be obliterated, the gaseous being whispered, its form a slow, sad vortex. The humans, their world. It is a tragedy we could not prevent. Vel analyzed the tactical display. The Cathar will not even slow down. They will pass through the system, and the gravitational wake of their main fleet alone will shatter any orbital infrastructure. The planet's biosphere may be stripped by the radiation pulse. It will be quick. Elder pulsed a dim, regretful blue. They were a promising species. Their anger was their end. We must now focus our remaining strength on the core defense. They watched as the lead elements of the Cathar fleet, a vanguard of hundreds of brutal fighters and a dozen massive hive ships, crossed the orbit of Mars. They were hours from Earth. The blue planet hung in the telescope's view, peaceful and silent, unaware of the shadow falling upon it got deep within the Earth. The control room was a cave of cool blue light and quiet sounds. Jin stood beside Myra. Both of them looked much older than they had in the Council chamber a decade before. Lines marked their faces, but their eyes were clear and focused on the main hologram. It showed the Sol system, the red swarm of Cathar icons, and the silent, waiting blue dot of their home. All stations report ready, Mira said, her voice steady. The network is at 100% synchronization. The song is one note, waiting to be sung. Jin nodded. He looked at a smaller screen. It showed a live feed from the bridge of the Zhongzhou. Captain Tay's face was calm. His ship and the entire human flotilla were not hiding. They were positioned behind Earth, using the planet itself as a shield from the Caithar and from the watching council. Captain, Jin said. We are ready, sir, Tay replied. All ships are holding position. The pull will be strong. It will, Jin agreed. Hold fast. He turned back to the main display. The leading edge of the Caithar swarm was entering the asteroid belt. This was the moment. Jin took a final slow breath. He thought of the condescending smiles of the council. He thought of Hana's defiant last words. He thought of every person on the planet above, trusting them. Begin the sequence, he said. Myra touched a series of controls. A deep, subaudible hum filled the control room. A vibration felt in the bones more than heard. Across the planet, in 14 deep places, the colossal resonators awoke. On the Council's damaged sensors, something impossible happened. A gravity spike of unbelievable magnitude registered for a single second at the location of Earth. It was so powerful, it bent the light from distant stars. Then it vanished. What was that? Vel exclaimed, its mandibles clicking furiously. A weapon misfire? A core collapse? Before anyone could answer, the telescopes showed the effect. The pulse from Earth was not a beam of energy. It was a perfectly shaped, focused gravity wave. It did not hit the Caithar fleet. It washed over the asteroid belt. The belt was a field of rubble, millions of rocks, some as small as dust, some as large as cities, all drifting in the silent dark. The gravity pulse touched them all. It was a gentle nudge, applied with impossible planet-scale precision. It was the tap of a master pianist on a single galaxy-sized key. Every asteroid, every piece of rock and ice, was suddenly given a new direction. A gentle, insistent push. Their orbits, which had been random and slow, were now aligned. They began to move. Not wildly, but with a terrible organized purpose to the Caithar. It first looked like space itself was curdling around them. Then their sensors screamed. The empty space ahead, the space they were flying through at great speed, was no longer empty. It was filling with a storm of stone. The first wave was dust and pebbles. At the speed the Caithar were moving, they hit like hypervelocity slugs, pocking and scraping their armored hulls. Then came the baseball-sized rocks, then the car-sized boulders. They clanged and shattered against the ships, causing alarms to blare. Then came the mountains, asteroids the size of skyscrapers, tumbling slowly but with immense mass, drifted into the fleet's path. A Caithar hive ship, unable to change course quickly enough, slammed into one at a fractional percentage of light speed. The explosion was silent and brilliant, a new sun blooming in the dark. Then another, and another. The Caithar swarm descended into chaos. They tried to evade, but there was no pattern to evade. The entire volume of space around them was now a moving, shifting maze of solid matter. They fired their weapons, blasting rocks apart, but that only created more, smaller projectiles. It was like trying to shoot their way through a hailstorm made of granite. The council watched, their logic utterly broken. They saw the Caithar vanguard disintegrate. They saw the elegant, horrible geometry of it. The asteroids were not being thrown. They were being guided, herded by the subtle, repeated gravity pulses from Earth. Pulses so faint after the initial spike that they were almost undetectable, but relentless. Earth was not fighting the fleet. Earth was moving the furniture of its own solar system into the fleet's way. It was turning its home territory into a death trap, not with lasers, but with orbital mechanics. With gravity, the main Cathar force, further back, tried to stop. They tried to turn. But their momentum was too great, and the field of moving rock was expanding, reaching out for them like the fingers of a giant stone hand. For an hour, the silent fireworks continued. The flashes of light were the deaths of ships, of warriors, of an empire's ambition. They were snuffed out, not by a superior enemy, but by the carefully arranged rocks of a backyard they had thought empty. Finally, the movement stopped. The gravity pulses ceased. The last of the asteroids settled into new, stable orbits, gleaming with the fresh scars of impact. Where there had been a swarm of thousands of Cathar ships. There was now a wider, denser asteroid belt, glittering with new debris. A few crippled hive ships tumbled helplessly, bleeding atmosphere and silent. The main force had been annihilated. In the council chamber, there was no sound. The representatives stared at the screen, at the peaceful blue planet that had just used its own gravity to wipe out an invasion fleet. They had seen weapons of energy, of plasma, of antimatter. They had never seen a weapon of context, a weapon that used the very stage of the battle as its ammunition. Vel finally spoke, its voice a dry, shocked rustle. They did not build a shield. They built a door, and they just swung it shut on the enemy's head. Elder pulsed, a slow, stunned rhythm of light. The simple, terrible truth was now clear. Humanity's fury was not an explosion. It was a calculation, and the stars themselves had just felt the result. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was heavier than any darkness between stars. The screens were live again, showing the aftermath. The glittering, expanded debris field that had been the Cathar fleet drifted in the quiet of the Sol system. And there, in the center of it all, the blue-green marble of Earth hung, serene and untouched. The data streams scrolling beside the images told a story that defied all their models. The energy output, the gravitational manipulation, the precision on a solar system scale, it was an act of war that looked like an act of nature. Elder, the crystalline being, pulsed with a dim, weary light. We must send a ship. We must understand what has happened. The ship they sent was the Lawgiver, an old vessel of diplomacy and judgment. Its hull was smooth and pale, a symbol of the Council's peaceful authority. It crept into the edge of the Sol system, its sensors delicate, its weapons powered down. It felt like a mouse entering a cave where a dragon slept. The debris was thicker here, but it was orderly. A clear path had been swept through the new ring of asteroid fragments, a corridor leading inward toward Earth. It was an invitation, or a warning. Inside the Lawgiver, the envoy from the Council watched the scans. There were no energy signatures, no fleet movements, just the quiet planet, and a single, small ship holding position near the orbit of Mars. It was a human cruiser, its hull scarred and pitted from recent furious motion. Its identification beacon read, Zhangzhou. A channel is open, the communications officer said, its voice hushed. They are waiting for us. On the screen, the bridge of the Zhangzhou appeared. Captain Tay stood in the center. His uniform was neat, but he looked tired. There was no triumph on his face, only a deep, solid calm. Behind him, his crew worked quietly. They were not celebrating. They were waiting. Council Vessel Lawgiver, Tay said, his voice clear. This is Captain Tay of the Earthship Zhangzhou. You are entering sovereign human space. State your purpose. The envoy, a being of gentle light and soft voice, answered. We come in peace. We come to understand. The Council has witnessed the events here. We seek to speak. Tay nodded slowly. You are cleared to approach. Follow the beacon. Do not deviate from the vector. The Lawgiver followed the path through the debris. It was a humbling journey. The scale of the destruction was immense. Here and there, the shattered hull of a Caithar hive ship, as large as a mountain, tumbled slowly amidst the rocks. It was a graveyard built in an hour. Finally, the Zhongzhou grew larger in their viewport. It was smaller than the lawgiver, but it seemed rooted in space, unmovable. A docking tube extended. The envoy, alone, crossed over. The meeting room on the Zhongzhou was small and plain. Captain Tay stood opposite the envoy. There were no guards. Just two beings in a quiet room. The Caithar are gone, the envoy said, its light flickering. Your world is safe. Our world was always safe, Tay replied. The Caithar were just the proof. The proof of what? That you were wrong, Tay said, his voice not angry, but final. You looked at us and saw chaos. You saw our love for our home, our anger at injustice, our willingness to fight for each other, and you called it a flaw. You told us to suppress it, to become calm, like you, to be logical. He walked to a view screen and touched a control. It showed Earth, whole and beautiful. So we used logic, the most perfect logic. You gave us 100 years of probation, of being watched. We spent it learning the one thing you never mastered. What is that? What is that? The envoy asked, though it feared it already knew. How to give our fury geometry, Tay said softly. You thought fury was a fire, wild and burning. We made it a scalpel. You thought our planet was a cradle to be protected. We made it a fulcrum. You moved ships. We moved asteroids. You see the difference? The envoy's light dimmed. The difference was the scale of ambition. The council thought in terms of fleets and treaties. Humanity had thought in terms of solar systems and physics. You planned for this, the envoy whispered. You planned to be used as fodder. You planned for an enemy to come this way. Hope for the best, Tay said, quoting an old human saying. Plan for the worst. You were the worst we hoped you wouldn't be. The Caithar were the worst we knew would come eventually. We had one answer for both. A chime sounded. A door slid open. Jin and Mira walked in. They wore simple clothes. They looked like engineers, not ambassadors or generals. Jin stood beside Tay. The probation is over, Jin said to the envoy. The observation is over. You have learned too late what we are. We are not your wards. We are not your weapon. We are a people. And this, he gestured to the view screen, to the silent power it represented, is our statement of sovereignty. We will defend it. We will not be commanded. The envoy looked from Jin to Myra to Tay. It saw no hatred. It saw no glee. It saw only certainty. They were not monsters. They were something the galaxy had forgotten, a species that felt so deeply they could shape their feelings into laws of physics. Their love for Earth had been so vast, they had turned its very gravity into a shield. What happens now? The envoy asked. Now you go back, Jin said. You tell the council what you saw. You tell them that Earth is open for dialogue. As equals, our terms will follow. They will be fair, but they will not be negotiated from a position of your condescension. The time for that is past. The meeting was over. The envoy returned to the lawgiver in a daze. As the ship turned and slowly made its way back through the corridor of debris, the last transmission from the Zhongzhou played on the bridge dot. It was Captain Tay's face once more. You believed your peace was kept by removing passion, he said. We believe true peace is kept by understanding the power of what you feel and choosing where to aim it. Goodbye, Council. We will be in touch. The lawgiver jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Sol system behind. Back on the ring station, the council assembled to hear the envoy's report. There were no grand speeches, no debates. The data was too clear. The result was too absolute dot in the quiet of the chamber. A new phrase entered the galactic lexicon, spoken not with pity, but with a wary, newfound respect. They called it Earth's Fury. It was not a random explosion. It was a directed force, a natural disaster with a mind and a purpose. And out among the stars, on a small blue world, the resonators were powered down, but not dismantled. They slept in the deep places. The human fleet, small and scarred, resumed its patrols. Life on Earth went on, its people looking at the stars not with fear, or with a desperate need for approval, but with the quiet confidence of those who have tested their strength and found it sufficient. The galaxy had grown larger, not in size, but in possibility. A new power had announced itself, not with a shout, but with the deep, resonant ring of a bell that had shaken the stars. And the Galactic Council, in its ancient wisdom, had learned the hardest lesson of all, that some things, once dismissed, can never be forgotten.